Question. Hey Nate, I really appreciate the fact that I'm able to ride easy rides on many of my recovery days. On those days, sometimes I ride with my wife and explore new routes. Yesterday, I explored a new route and discovered that there was a short, steep section, 15 to 20% grade, on which I need to maintain an above threshold wattage for about 4 minutes, which is way more than the recommended wattage. Does that jeopardize my recovery? So this is a great question. I think it comes up for a lot of people is like, how easy does it need to be on a recovery day to help facilitate good recovery? And how does that contribute to my overall progress as an athlete? And I think as long as you're, thinking about that and have the right mindset about, your hard workout days are days when you try to go pretty hard. And then on your easier days, you're trying to recover, get some basic aerobic conditioning in, keep moving, but set yourself up for recovering from that last workout and getting ready for the next workout so that you hopefully go into it feeling pretty fresh and recovered. You're probably going to be okay as long as you keep that in your head and you don't get distracted by somebody passing you on the road, or you don't sprint for a bunch of town line sprints because you're riding with a friend and getting distracted from your priority for the ride. And I think this kind of goes to one of the key ideas that I like for myself and for a lot of athletes is that it's not necessarily always critically important to do exactly, precisely what a training plan says or what a particular workout is written to include, but that can be very useful. And for some people, their brains work that way, that it's just the easiest thing to just go out and hit my 5 by 10 minutes of threshold with 8 minutes of recovery and just do it to the T. But a lot of times, for people that are picking their routes and planning their training around, the rides that they want to do, or things come up in their schedule and there's maybe things that are in flux a little bit, it's okay to be a little bit flexible as long as you're very clear about your priorities and you're focused in your training and you know what your goals are for each workout, what your goals are for your recovery days, what you're working towards, and kind of you keep those things in mind so that you're always moving in the right direction and not getting, blown off course, whether or not that means, nailing every workout to the second and what, or if it's, you give yourself a little bit of freedom to vary outside of that. So in this particular case, if you ride easy for an hour or two or whatever the appropriate amount of time is for you, and for a couple minutes you ride around your threshold, that's probably fine. If you are so tired that you can't do that on your recovery ride, or that you are going to feel more tired at the end of your ride on a recovery day than you did beforehand, it might be best to just call it and take the day entirely off, or to cut down the time. And if you planned an hour and a half of easy riding, maybe you just ride for 30 or 45 minutes to just loosen up your legs and then go home and stretch and roll your legs out. If on the other hand, you plan for an hour and a half of easy riding and you just happen to want to do a route that has a climb that maybe has a few steep switchbacks in it, if your power goes outside of the range that you're shooting for that particular ride, it's probably fine as long as you aren't pushing so hard that your legs start to ache or burn, your heart rate gets really high, your breathing gets really high. I think a lot of times people get too fixated on trying to nail certain power numbers, which is very useful. Power is an objective measure of the rate of metabolism that you're engaged in while you're riding. But at the same time, little spikes in power on a recovery ride or on a steady endurance ride aren't the end of the world, as long as they're, pretty short and they aren't, they don't feel hard and they don't drive your heart rate up. In contrast, if you're pushing, a little bit higher power and it's long enough that you see your heart rate get up closer to your threshold heart rate or above, then you know that you're really kind of starting to create some sort of stress on your body. The chemistry in your muscles and your blood is changing, and you're starting to create more of a training stress that is better left for your harder training days. Likewise, if you feel like your legs are hurting and you're breathing hard, that indicates that you're not really in recovery mode and you're kind of pushing more towards training. I think it's a common trope that some athletes or some coaches might get a little bit upset if they see little spikes in power on a recovery ride or on a steady endurance ride, somebody pushes hard up a short little rise or something like that. And it's sure, you want to stay focused and stay on task. And if you're trying to do a recovery ride, you want the ride to feel easy and you want to not, burn too many calories that you don't need to burn, and you want to get ready for the next workout. But 30 seconds going up a little roller at a moderate effort that is not getting your heart rate up very high, it's not making your legs burn or ache, and is just like, getting close to your threshold power, and your heart rate barely even doesn't even touch like tempo territory, it's not a big deal. As long as you're just keeping in mind that you want to set yourself up for being fresh for the next workout, you should be fine. One reason that I like this question is that it kind of calls to mind the overall strategy you would want to have for your training program. And one of the most common mistakes that people make, I feel like a lot of times people do a lot of moderately hard rides, and most of their rides are done in that way, and they have very few recovery sessions, and they also have basically no really hard workouts. If you feel good on all of your rides and you push kind of hard on all of your rides, you can rest assured that you're not riding as hard as you could on your hard days, because if you never feel like you really need a recovery day, your hard days are probably not hard enough. And on the other hand, if you do like pretty high quality training a couple times a week on your harder days, you definitely will feel like you want to take some really easy days in between those harder sessions. Just, I don't know, use that as a signal sometimes if you're training and you do a hard workout on Wednesday, let's say, and then Thursday you feel fine, and Friday you feel fine, and you go into Saturday and you feel totally fine, and you do a hard workout on Saturday, and then on Sunday you feel fine. If that's the case, I would look at that workout on Wednesday and on Saturday and see, what you could do to make it harder, whether that's just pushing more watts and trying to do faster pacing on your hill repeats, or adding a couple more of them, or if you have time, adding more distance. But if your so-called hard days aren't hard enough that you feel like you really need to take a pretty chill recovery ride the next day or two, probably you're leaving stuff on the table where you could get in some higher quality workouts, because you're not really exhausting your capacity to recover from them and progress and get better. And then just as one last kind of final parting tip, even on your recovery days when your calorie expenditure is not very high and your effort level is not very high, hopefully you did some good training a day or two prior, and your overall training load is challenging enough that it's driving your fitness forward. So even if you just do an hour or an hour and a half pretty easy, you should still finish up those easier recovery rides with a pretty good recovery snack. And even though it might not be that demanding that day, you're probably still recovering from whatever your harder workout was a day or two ago, or the last race that you did. And especially in those first minutes and hours right after any training session, even if it is just a recovery session, your body is going to be more receptive to the incoming carbohydrate and protein that you might get from a recovery meal. So if you did a race on Saturday and then you just do an easy couple hours on Sunday, I would have a meal that was disproportionately higher in carbohydrate and protein and calories than you would otherwise have if you just did a bunch of 2-hour pretty chill rides. So just keep in mind how tired your body is overall, and any residual fatigue and recovery that you still need from a day or two ago, and just take that into account when you're planning your recovery for today. And that goes for your food right after your rides, your food overall and hydration, and also how much sleep you need. Because I would think about getting, spreading out the extra calories and protein and sleep across your entire week, because sometimes on your really hard days you can't recoup all those calories and you can't sleep an extra 2 or 3 or 4 hours to help recover for that day. And besides, the recovery process takes multiple days, so you need to kind of keep taking care of your body day after day so that you can keep getting better. I think that's it for this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.